Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? It's your boy, The Doc, and we're back for the Week 16 Injury Update Show. You guys know the deal by now. Each and every week, I, an actual doctor, go through the entire NFL slate, tell you about all the injuries that you need to know about for your fantasy teams, and it's fantasy playoff time, guys. So we're looking for all the advantages that we can get, and this show is here to help you. So let's jump into it. A lot of injuries to talk about for Week 16. All right, guys, before we jump into it, we do have a moment of silence or two to talk about this week. Guys that had their seasons ended due to injury in Week 15. First up, we got Ravens running back Keaton Mitchell dealing with an ACL tear, kind of a brutal looking injury. Got himself kind of caught up under his own body, his knee hyperextended. It did tear his ACL. He's done for the year. Hopefully he can be back before next season. And then we got Bengals defensive tackle DJ Reader has a quad tear. The Bengals already struggle to stop the run, and now they're going to be without their big defensive tackle in the middle. He's also in a contract year, so really tough break for the defensive tackle. Let's pour one out in the chat for those guys, but we got a lot of other injuries to talk about. We'll briefly mention Thursday Night Football, Saints at the Rams. Not a lot of injuries to talk about in this game. Saints a little banged up on the defensive side of the ball. Isaiah Foskey, Peyton Turner, two defensive ends that were ruled out before this game. As for the Rams, no one crazy important to talk about. So we're going to go straight in to the Saturday games. We got Bengals at the Steelers. Bengals wide receiver Jamar Chase dealing with a shoulder sprain. They're calling it a separated shoulder. Typically, when you hear the verbiage separated, it means that the AC joint has completely torn. The ligament that holds basically the clavicle to the acromion or the point of your shoulder has separated completely, has torn completely. That's typically a multiple week injury. He's already been ruled out, but they did say that they expect this to be a day-to-day thing. I'd be surprised if he doesn't miss at least next week and possibly even week 18 as well. The test did come back positive though, so who knows what's going to happen with Jamar Chase. Just know he's already been ruled out for week 16. T. Higgins on pace for another big week here. As for the Steelers, quarterback Kenny Pickett has already been ruled out with his ankle sprain, but did get back to practicing in a limited capacity. I don't care what you say about Kenny Pickett. He has to be better than Mitchell Trubisky. In fact, Mason Rudolph is going to be getting the start for the Steelers. That's how bad Trubisky has been. I would not be surprised if we don't see Trubisky on a football field as a backup anytime soon. And then safety Minkah Fitzpatrick already ruled out as well. The Steelers are hurting at the safety position. Fitzpatrick out. DeMonte Casey also got suspended. So really thin at the safety position for the Steelers. Look for some deep shots there from the Bengals to test that secondary. Moving on, Bills at the Chargers. Bills tight end Dalton Kincaid dealing with a shoulder sprain. Limited practice so far, but only saw 49% of the team's snaps last week. Put up a goose egg for fantasy. Very risky start this week, even though I do expect him to play. Safety Micah Hyde dealing with a neck stinger, that is. He's already been ruled out, so they're going to be without their star safety. As for the Chargers, wide receiver Keenan Allen already ruled out with the heel injury. Not sure if or when we are going to see Keenan Allen again. Really brutal break with Justin Herbert going down, and now Keenan Allen looking like he probably won't play again this year. And then defensive end Joey Bosa coming back from the foot sprain, limited practice. The good news is that his practice window was open. Bad news is he's already been ruled out for this week, so maybe next week on Joey Bosa. Now, moving on to the early Sunday games, we got Colts at the Falcons. Colts running back Zach Moss is dealing with what they're calling a forearm injury. It was initially reported as a shoulder injury, but just know he's not practicing this week. Says that he thinks he can play in this game, but the practice schedule, the reports coming out of practice that he's not really doing anything but rehab tells me it would be a stretch to see Zach Moss. But the good news is that running back Jonathan Taylor is coming back from that thumb surgery, back practicing in full. He is expected to play. I'd expect him to have a major role coming back in his first week. And then wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. dealing with a concussion from that hit earlier on from Demonte Casey. Sorry, the hit he put on him actually got Casey suspended for the year, but it looks like Pittman avoided a major injury. He was in concussion protocol, still technically in protocol, but got full practice in on Thursday. Looks like he's going to be able to play this week, a good sign for anybody who is wanting the target monster to be playing for their championships or close to championships this weekend. As for the Falcons, no real injuries to talk about. So we're going on to the Packers at the Panthers. Packers have 17 different players on the injury report, very banged up right now. Wide receiver Jaden Reed dealing with a toe injury, not practicing so far, but he's only one catch away from tying Sterling Sharp's franchise record for catches in a rookie season. I do think we see him again this year, but I don't think it's going to be this week. So expect him back maybe next week or the week after that. Running back A.J. Dillon dealing with that fractured thumb, back practicing this week. A limited capacity would be a little bit of a stretch to see him playing this week. He's going to be a game time decision, but he's not really someone I'm dying to start with. Aaron Jones back in the mix for the Packers. Wide receiver Christian Watson has that hamstring strain, not practicing this week. Don't expect him to play. And then tight end Luke Musgrave dealing with that lacerated kidney that he picked up about a month ago. Did get his practice window opened up, but did not technically practice yet this week. Doesn't look like maybe this week is the return, but hopefully ramping him up for next week. As for the Panthers, they do have 6 guys on the report with illness, but no one in serious danger of missing this game and nobody really important enough to spend a lot of time on. So we're heading over to the Browns at the Texans. Browns do have a few guys limited in practice, but no one that I'd expect to miss the game. So I'm just going to leave them alone for now. As for the Texans, defensive end Will Anderson Jr. dealing with that high ankle sprain, not practicing. Don't expect him to play. Same thing with Blake Cashman, the linebacker, and his hamstring strain. He's not practicing. Don't expect him to play. CJ Stroud coming off that concussion last week, missed last week's game, not practicing yet this week, not progressing as quickly as you would hope in that concussion protocol. Doesn't look like we'll be able to see him return this week. Kind of a big blow for the offense and anyone who's been relying on Stroud for their fantasy teams. Don't expect him back this week. Wide receiver Nico Collins, though, coming back from the calf strain, is practicing again in a limited capacity. The matchup isn't great. The quarterback situation isn't great, but it does look like he's going to be able to play. Might be a wide receiver 4 flex option for you. As for wide receiver Noah Brown, he's coming off that knee injury. Finally broke out of the slump that he was in. Big game last week, finished as the wide receiver 9 on the week, but Noah Brown has the knee injury. He's been playing through it. I'd expect him to play through it again. If Collins doesn't suit up, I like him a lot more as a flex option. Moving on to Lions at the Vikings. Not a lot of guys to talk about. The Lions are pretty healthy right now, one of the healthiest teams in the league. As for the Vikings, running back Alexander Madison dealing with that ankle sprain, not practicing yet. Looks like it's going to be another Ty Chandler week for the Vikings, and he definitely is startable even against this Lions defense that has not been the greatest matchup against running backs so far this year. Moving on to the Commanders at the Jets. Commanders running back Brian Robinson Jr. still dealing with the hamstring strain, not practicing. Another week of him not practicing. Doesn't look like he's going to be back. I haven't read anything about him having a setback, so I was kind of surprised to see him miss multiple weeks here with this hamstring injury. No real news out of the Commanders, so I guess it's just a significant hamstring strain, and he's just not progressing the way that they would expect him to, or the way they thought he would when he initially injured it. Either way, the backups didn't look great last week for the Commanders. I guess you're still starting Antonio Gibson in PPR leagues because he is getting quite a bit of volume in the passing game, but again, not really a great option there for the Commanders at the running back position. As for the Jets, quarterback Zach Wilson's going through concussion protocol. He's not practicing. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to play. Aaron Rodgers coming off that Achilles tear. Interesting, they did activate him off the IR this week, but he's not practicing. The team has already said they don't expect him back this season. We all knew that that was where this was heading. I'm not surprised that Aaron Rodgers made this as difficult as possible. I am surprised that they didn't just keep him on the IR. They could have reverted him back to the IR and completely removed his chances of coming back this year, but they put him on the active roster, taking up a roster spot. don't really understand what that's all about. It sounds like to me they're just kind of pandering to him so that he can say, oh yeah, well, I would have come back. I did come back technically, even though he didn't have to play because, again, they've already been ruled out of the playoffs. So I don't know. I feel like this is just kind of catering to what the star quarterback wants. Trevor Siemian is expected to get the start for the Jets, and you are not putting him in your fantasy lineup if you're trying to win. Moving on to the Seahawks at the Titans. Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker dealing with a shoulder injury now. Back-to-back DNPs, but again, he's been banged up all year, so it's not crazy surprising to see Kenneth Walker on the injury report and not practicing a whole lot. If he practices today, I would expect him to play, but for right now, he's going to be a game-time decision. Quarterback Geno Smith dealing with the groin strain. He's back practicing in full. Pete Carroll is playing some crazy mind games with the injury reports before Monday Night Football this week. Ultimately, he did activate Geno Smith, but he did not start him or play him. So I would say that was probably some tomfoolery by Pete Carroll and the coaching staff. I don't think that they ever expected Geno to play. I think this week was always kind of the plan, but Locke played pretty well. I mean, he got the team a win. So we'll see if there's any quarterback controversy. I don't really expect it there to be. I think Geno Smith is probably the safer option at the quarterback position for the Seahawks. As for the Titans, they got 18 guys on the injury report. A lot of dudes missing multiple practices this week. Will Levis dealing with the high ankle sprain. Does sound like this is the exact same injury that Ryan Tannehill has dealt with in the past few years. He would typically miss 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ryan Tannehill back as the starter. As for wide receiver Traylon Burks, he's got an illness. He hasn't practiced yet this week. Actually led the team in receiving last week, but now not practicing due to illness. I'd still expect him to play, but it's never really a surprise for me at this point to see Traylon Burks on the injury report. And then a lot of defenders missing multiple days of practice. Linebackers Jack Gibbons, Luke Gifford, both those guys not looking likely to play. Same thing with Amani Hooker and Kevon Wallace. Sean Murphy-Bunting, cornerback, and then defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons, all not practicing. The team is basically throwing a JV squad out on defense. All right, let's head into the midday slate. First up, we got Jags at the Bucks. Jags quarterback Trevor Lawrence dealing with a concussion, not practicing yet. Doesn't look like he is going to be able to play in this game. Was placed in concussion protocol after the game, though. We've seen this a few times this year where players aren't taken out during the game, but then get tested again and test for a concussion after the game, get put in protocol after the game. A little suspicious. I thought the league was trying to rule that kind of stuff out, but I feel like we've seen it enough times now that I'm starting to wonder if this isn't the loophole that teams are using to get guys out of the concussion protocol and maybe keep them in games. I don't know. Either way, Trevor Lawrence not expected to play this week with this concussion. Wide receiver Zay Jones has a hamstring strain. This one looks serious. Didn't look like he was going to be able to play anytime soon. I would not be expecting him to play again this season. Probably droppable if you're holding on to him in fantasy. As for the Bucks, we got linebacker Devin White coming back from his foot injury. Full practices this week, has missed the last 3 games, but is back practicing in full. Like I said, I would expect him to play this week. Moving on to the Cardinals at the Bears. Cardinals wide receiver Marquise Brown dealing with the heel injury, not practicing this week. He's been dealing with this heel issue for the last month or so. Coming off the bye, kind of hoped maybe he'd be over it, but it sounds like he aggravated it again on Sunday, has now developed into something that I'd expect him to miss games with. I doubt that he plays this week. Wide receiver Greg Dortch dealing with a shoulder injury. He's not practicing either, so it looks like Michael Wilson going to be the de facto wide receiver 1 for this group, but let's be honest, it's Trey McBride or tough to say. Try to say that 5 times fast. Trey McBride or bust this week for the Cardinals. As for the Bears, tight end Cole Kmet dealing with a quad injury. Was not listed on the injury report on Wednesday, picked up this injury in practice and was limited on Thursday. Never like to see a midweek downgrade for a guy, but I do expect him to still be able to play in this game. Just worth knowing that something's going on here with Cole Kmet's quad. And then we got Cowboys at the Dolphins. Cowboys dealing with two guys, very important players on the offensive line. Tyron Smith has a back injury. He's not been practicing. And then Zach Martin dealing with a quad strain. He's not practicing either. Again, not really fantasy relevant necessarily in terms of those guys scoring points, but it is overall relevant to the offense. Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, two of the better offensive linemen in the league. And just not easy to replace those guys. If Zach Martin misses this game, they're going to replace him with an undrafted rookie in TJ Bass. So something to pay attention to, not really something you're looking forward to if you are planning on starting a lot of Cowboys in this game. As for the Dolphins, wide receiver Tyreek Hill dealing with the ankle sprain, limited in practice on Thursday, didn't practice Wednesday. Anyone who watched last week's injury show was not surprised for the late scratch of Tyreek Hill. He looked like he was moving around pretty good, but the team opted that they didn't need him against a Jets team that was not very good and didn't really put up much of a fight at all. Probably better for everyone involved that he got a little bit of rest. But again, really sorry if your fantasy season was ended because Tyreek Hill didn't play last week. I tried to give you guys a heads up that there would be a chance that he would have a setback once that ankle swelled a bit. Ultimately, though, this week, I do think Tyreek Hill suits up. Even though I don't think the Cowboys are putting necessarily their best squad out there, having already locked up a playoff spot, I do think that Tyreek Hill is still startable if he is playing. Running back Devon Achane dealing with a toe injury, limited in practice on Thursday. The toe issue is clearly limiting the upside of Achane right now, and I'd expect it to continue to do so. Toe injuries aren't really something you get over with quickly. I've sat him in a few leagues that I'm still competing in. I just don't think that he is at 100% and playing healthy right now. He seems like more of a decoy, more of a change of pace than what we saw earlier in the season when they were using him and Mostert to be really dynamic in the run game. I just don't think he has the juice right now that he had at the beginning of the year. Raheem Mostert, probably one of my best preseason calls, and is on the fast track again for another big game this week. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, we got Patriots at the Broncos. Patriots tight end Hunter Henry dealing with a knee injury. Didn't practice at all this week so far. After one of his better games last week against the Chiefs, said his knee felt all right after the game, but coming out of the Pats locker room, he wasn't very honest about his availability. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to play in this game. Same thing with Ramondre Stevenson dealing with that high ankle sprain, not practicing again. I would be very surprised if we see Ramondre again this season. I'm probably dropping him if I need the space right now. And then for the Broncos, we got linebacker Nick Bonito, has an MCL sprain. Had somebody complain in the comments that I wasn't giving any love to Nick Bonito. So here you go, guys. I do read the comments when you complain about me not including players. So Nick Bonito dealing with the MCL sprain, back-to-back DNPs, doesn't look like he's going to be able to suit up in this game. And then we got 3 games to talk about for Monday. Merry Christmas, y'all. Raiders at the Chiefs. First up, we got Raiders running back Josh Jacobs dealing with the quad strain. Didn't practice. All the practice reports for these Monday games are walkthroughs, so it doesn't really tell us a whole lot, but just know he wouldn't have practiced if they had had an actual practice. Left the game a couple weeks ago. Didn't look great walking on the sideline. Really looked like he had hurt his quad in a pretty serious manner. I don't expect him to be able to play in this game. Michael Mayer, the tight end, dealing with a toe sprain. I didn't see anything about him being limited in last week's game. Didn't see him leave the game. But at some point he picked up a toe issue. I'd still expect him to be able to play unless he doesn't practice for the rest of the weekend. As for the Chiefs, running back Isaiah Pacheco had a shoulder injury. They called it contusion, but the truth came out. He had a shoulder surgery, very small procedure to address the contusion that he had. Either way, he's back practicing in full this week. Looks like he's going to be able to play, and I'm probably throwing him in my lineups because the Raiders defense has not looked that great against the run, even though the offense looked incredible last week against a really, really defeated Chargers team. We got Giants at the Eagles next. Giants tight end Darren Waller came back from his hamstring strain. He's practicing in full this week. returning from that IR stint, was pretty much used how I expected him. Wasn't really a focal point of the offense, but was good enough, I guess, to stream if you're really hurting at the tight end position. Darren Waller's a guy that you probably maybe could still get off waivers. Who knows? I doubt it, though. A lot of guys holding on to him for the potential, I guess, of him having a big week. But Darren Waller should be startable again as a streaming option. As for the Eagles, Devontae Smith dealing with a knee injury. Didn't practice. Picked this knee injury up on Monday. I couldn't really find anything indicating that it was serious, though, so I'd still expect him to play as of this recording. And then last game of the week, we got Ravens at the 49ers. Ravens are pretty healthy, so we'll just talk about a couple defensive guys for the 49ers. Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, two defensive linemen not practicing that missed last week's game. I'd be surprised to see both of these guys on Monday playing. I don't expect either one of those guys to play, and hopefully you guys have a great Christmas season with your families. I know that I'm looking forward to a little bit of football. All right, guys, that's it for the Week 16 injury update show. Is there anybody that I missed? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure, if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. This is the time of year when people start unsubscribing for the channel, but guys, it really helps us if you're subscribed to the channel year round. We put out all sorts of fantasy and football content year round. We try to make sure that you guys are getting content 365, 7 days a week, trying to put something out for you guys. So please help us out. Hit the subscribe button. It's free and it does help us out a ton. I want to thank our sponsors over at Manscaped. Use code Headliners, get 20% off plus free shipping. Head over to pristineauction.com. Use the code Headliners when you sign up. Let them know that we sent you. They're giving us all sorts of amazing free stuff to give away to the listeners and the watchers of this show. Make sure that you're supporting them as well. It's totally free to sign up with that code Headliners. And of course, our friends at Underdog Fantasy. If you've already been eliminated from your fantasy playoffs, want to get in on the action, go over to Underdog Fantasy, use the code Headliners, get a $100 first deposit match of your first $100 that you deposit when you use that code. Make sure you're helping our friends out. That's all I got for you guys this week. Hope you have a great Christmas and holiday season. I will see you guys next week. The Doc is out.